Welcome back. Today is Friday, October the 2nd, 2020. And today I am going to talk about my journey with Wegener's granulomatosis. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Betsy. I have a very rare autoimmune disease called Wegener's granulomatosis. There is no known cause, there is no known cure. And I was diagnosed almost 2 years ago, and it'll be 2 years in November. And if you want to learn more about it, you can check out my playlist that I have down, linked down below. It has from when I was in the hospital up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I posted my last update. Today I'm going to talk about chemotherapy. Now, I have talked about chemotherapy in the past, but today I want to talk about what it was like for me to be on chemotherapy, what I did to deal with the side effects and the infusions, etc., and then how it has affected me long term. And so this has kind of been brought to mind to me because I have an aunt. I'm not going to mention any names to keep their privacy private, but I have an aunt who was recently diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer and stage 4 uterine cancer, and she will be starting chemotherapy next week. She is going to be on a completely different chemotherapy than I was on. The chemotherapy that I was given is called Cytoxan. I had 10 rounds of it over the course of 6 months. I did the first 3 rounds were 2 weeks apart, and after that they were every 3 weeks until I was done. When I was done, a month later, I started my Rituxan treatments, which is an antibody therapy, but it is given for me through an infusion. So just a few things. For me, chemo was very, very hard on me. It was mentally and physically hard on me. One of the biggest side effects for the chemo that I was on was hair loss. Now, I was told in the hospital, because I did ask, first thing I asked when they said, you are going to have to start chemo, is will I lose my hair? And that's a very, very sensitive subject for me. I have always had beautiful hair. I have had very long hair. My hair was well past the middle of my back. It was very, very thick, and it was very curly, and I just had beautiful hair. I love my hair. And they said, no, you're not going to lose your hair. This one doesn't have hair loss generally as a side effect. The main side effect they wanted to talk to me about was it does cause infertility, which was not an issue for me because 2 reasons. Number one, I'd had a hysterectomy in my early 30s, and so I wasn't going to have children, and I couldn't even have children to begin with. And number two, I was 46 years old. I had no intentions of having children. But of course, they needed to tell me, and I was fine with the infertility because that wasn't going to be an issue. I had my first infusion in the hospital, and I was in the ICU, and I did not have any trouble with it. I felt really good. About 36 hours later, I started to feel pretty bad, and it was a nausea. Now, at the time, I didn't realize it was nausea because it didn't feel like I knew nausea as. When I think of nausea, I think of like when you have the stomach bug, or if you've ate something that didn't agree with you, or maybe if you had food poisoning, that kind of stomach pain. This is different. This is a really intense, almost feels like acid reflux. It just kind of sits in your chest, kind of goes towards your stomach. It's just an queasy, uneasy feeling. I kept telling the nurses all night long I didn't feel good, and they kept saying, oh, well, we'll get something from the doctors. And mind you, I'm in the ICU, and so they're coming in probably every 15 to 20 minutes, checking on me, doing different things. So this goes on all night long. About 5 o'clock Sunday morning, I had my first infusion on a Friday. About 5 o'clock Sunday morning, I got up because they were going to do breathing treatment on me because it was affecting my lungs. I was on oxygen, coughing up blood, which if you want to learn about that again, I'll have a playlist. But I told her, the nurse, I said, I don't feel very good. I sat up, and I'm going to be graphic for a moment. I threw up all over myself. And then I felt better. So I was like, okay, this is not going to go as smoothly as I thought. I felt a little bit rougher in the next day or two, and then I was okay. And I thought, okay, this is going to be smooth sailing. You know, I can deal with not feeling good for 2 or 3 days every few weeks or whatever. Well, I had my second round of chemo. By this point, I'm out of the hospital. I had my second round of chemotherapy, and the following week I was getting ready to go to dialysis. I was on dialysis for the first 3 months after I was diagnosed, and I was brushing my hair and I was losing hair. And I'm not talking just a little bit of hair, because I've always lost hair. You know, I have a lot of it will fall out. Clumps and clumps of hair were falling out of my hair, and my brush was full of hair. And that's when I realized I was going to lose my hair. And I realized it's just hair. You know, hair does grow back, but it was my hair. It was a part of me. It was something that I lost total control over. And it was very traumatizing for me. That is the one and only time my son ever saw me get upset. And the entire time, I kept it together, but it was just the thought that I'm going to be bald and I'm going to lose my hair. And like I said, I know that sounds petty or vain, but it was my hair. So I got myself pulled together, and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to shave my hair off. That way I can donate it to Locks of Love, and they can make a wig out of for a child or maybe an adult who's got cancer. And you know, I had decided I would order a wig, so I ordered a really cute wig, and I'd ordered a couple hats, and a few of my friends bought me hats, so I was all set to go. And it came time to cut my hair off. I had made an appointment with the lady who did my hair, and I just could not bring myself to do it. I thought, you know what? I don't care if I have 3 strands of hair. I'm keeping my hair as long as I can. And I am so very thankful I did, because I ended up losing about 2/3 of my hair. It's definitely come back. It's still thin. You know, normally it's curly, but I straightened it yesterday and today. But it's definitely thinned out. It's thicker than it was, but it's still incredibly thin in comparison. But you know what? I'm thankful to have hair. And all that time when I was losing my hair, and I would look in the mirror and I would see these huge bald patches like in my part, and I could see, you know, my scalp really well, I would just get so very upset. But then I would look in the mirror and I would tell myself I would rather be bald than dead. And so that kind of got me through the hair loss. The nausea and vomiting progressively got worse for me. I was very, very sick. I was so sick that I was not able to hardly eat, which for 2 reasons. One, when your kidneys are shutting down and you're in kidney failure, you lose your appetite. It's a great diet. I don't recommend it to anybody, but you can lose a lot of weight in a very short amount of time. So I was very sick. I ate very, very little because I had no appetite, which was a very new concept to me, as well as nothing had taste. When you're in kidney failure, and also with the chemo that helps aggravate it, you lose your sense of taste. So everything pretty much tasted like cardboard to me. It had no flavor. The only thing that had any flavor to me were super sweet things or very spicy things. And even then they were very muted, but I could get a flavor. So every day after dialysis, my sweet Pam would stop at a Sonic and get me a small diet cherry slush. And the other thing, when you're on dialysis, you can only have 32 ounces of liquid a day. So I would nurse that bad boy all afternoon into the evening because I couldn't, have very much liquid. And I really wasn't thirsty. So anyhow, that was another effect. It affected my taste buds. It made me very nauseous, very sick. I could only eat a little bit, and then I would tend to throw up. And I'm not trying to be gross. If this grosses you out, you may want to shut the video off at this point. But I kept a bucket next to me. I double-lined it, and almost immediately after I'd eat, or even if a lot of times I wouldn't even get 2 or 3 bites in, I would get sick. And So I would get sick to where I would throw up till there was nothing in my stomach. And sometimes I would throw up before I even ate. I threw up day, night. I would throw up in the middle of the night. I woke myself up more than once and threw up in bed because I couldn't get to the bucket fast enough. I threw up at dialysis one time because I got sick and I could not get sat up quick enough to get to my puke bucket that I carried with me. Like I said, this is gross, but this is reality. Because when you're on dialysis, you're tethered to a machine. And so you're kind of limited on your motions. It was rough. I tried not to get sick in front of my son. I tried not to get sick in front of my ex-husband, or, if I knew somebody was coming over, I would not eat in front of them because I knew I was going to be sick. And it didn't really matter what I ate. And I had lots of people offer me all sorts of advice. And I appreciated the advice. I understand people meant well, but it didn't matter what I ate. I could eat bland foods. I could eat spicy foods. I could drink water. It made me sick. It did not matter. It had nothing to do with my diet. Later on, I found out that I developed a secondary disease, which is called gastroparesis. A lot of times it's caused by diabetes. Mine was caused by prednisone that I take daily and will take for the rest of my life to keep me, if that put me in remission and keeps me in remission. And that's also why they put me on chemo. My Wegener's is a very aggressive form of Wegener's, and for me, I had to go on chemo. Not everybody on Wegener's does chemo. A lot of people just do the Rituxan, and some people don't even do Rituxan. All right, so that was another side effect. It was the nausea, the vomiting. I was sick constantly. I was very seldom that I'd even get a break of a day without being nauseated and vomiting. And if I did, I was very thankful. There was a point where 3 weeks passed that I held nothing down. Everything that crossed my lips came back up. And I really was truly afraid I was going to starve to death. And I realized I've got some meat on my bones. I'm no skinny mini, but it doesn't matter. If you don't eat and you don't get nutrition, you eventually will starve to death. And I was getting to that point. And that's when they finally sent me to the gastro doctor, and that's when they diagnosed me with the gastroparesis. Now, the nausea and vomiting did not go away at all during the chemo. It did lessen some, and I did have medication that I still take to this day that helps with the gastroparesis and helps with the nausea and the vomiting, and I still have times that I have that, but neither here nor there. Another thing for me is it caused me to have very, very sensitive teeth. I had to start using Sensodyne because my teeth hurt. I don't know how to explain it. It was just bizarre. So I started using Sensodyne, which if you ever have to buy Sensodyne, a little side note, it's very expensive. It's close to $10 for a tube. But you can buy it at the Dollar Tree for $1 because I love me some Dollar Tree. And my sweet from Carolyn bought me a tube. So anyhow, I had bought Sensodyne and then she found it at the Dollar Tree. So just a little hint for you. Another thing that it did was cause incredibly dry mouth. Like my mouth felt like it was full of cotton all the time. And I just always had a really bad taste in my mouth. And it was almost like a metallic taste. Part of it was from my kidneys. Part of it was from the chemotherapy. Let's see. Another thing is that it made me very tired. Now, I'm always tired. I joke that I live in a perpetual state of exhaustion, which is true. Unfortunately, a side effect of this disease is it does zap your energy. I've definitely felt better than I have in a long time, but I still get tired, and I still nap probably once a day most days. It depends. It also messed with me with insomnia, especially the night before a treatment. I would get very, very anxious and would not sleep. It did not matter what I did, so I started to take a prescription Xanax the night before. I had a very low dosage of the Xanax. I never even used the whole prescription. They actually prescribed me Xanax and they prescribed me Ativan because the Xanax gave me weird dreams. I found out the Ativan gave me weird dreams. It all gives me weird dreams. But it did help me kind of relax and ease my mind. It was really humbling too. I mean, it really changes your perspective when you go. And my chemo took 30 minutes. My Rituxan takes anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, which is the antibody therapy. But the chemo I was on was about a 30-minute infusion. And I would look around, and there would be people there that were there for hours on end, and they would be there multiple times a week for months and months and months. I saw lots of women who lost all their hair. And, it just made me appreciate that much more how good I really had it. Yeah, I had to have chemo. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, I was losing my hair and I was nauseated and sick, but I had a good prognosis at this point when I really got into it. And the chemo put me into remission along with the prednisone that I was on, or the dosage I was on. I'm still on it. So, for that, I'm very thankful. And it also taught me, I've talked about this before, it taught me a lot of humility. I learned to rely on people. I could not drive myself for about the first 4 months after I got sick because I was too weak. And so, I had to rely on people to take me to and from chemo. Even now, I still do because of the medicine they give you Benadryl with the Rituxan because there's always a chance of an allergic reaction, and so they have to do that, and so it makes you really incredibly tired. But I have people who have always been willing to take me to and from, that's something I'm very thankful for. So now I'm going to talk about how I dealt with things. Kind of touched upon a little bit of that. One thing I did was I always made sure when I had a chemo that I took a blanket with me. I had a very warm blanket because you do get cold. Now, where I had the chemo, they offered you a pillow, which I would always take, not for my head, but for my arm so I could rest it because I would have my infusion done actually on the top of my hand so I could rest my hand like that. So that was nice to have. I think they offered blankets. I never asked for one because I always had one. They had volunteers up until COVID that would come around and offer you a drink or a snack, or if you needed something, they'd be happy to get a magazine, a book. The nurses were so incredibly wonderful. And so that was really nice to have. Another thing I did was always made sure I brought something to do. I would bring a book because the infusion itself would only take 30 minutes, but there would be prep time things would have to be done. How orders would have to be made. The medicine would have to be done, taken to the pharmacy and set up. So, I would be there generally about 2 to 3 hours depending on the day. And a lot of times, I would always go see the doctor, and I could be there even longer depending on the doctor's schedule because I'd have to see the doctor before I'd start my infusion. Another thing is that I would make sure I brought my phone, a book, something to puzzle, something to pass the time. And then I always wore my handy dandy, I identify as a badass socks from my sweet friend Megan. And I will link a picture or add a picture so you can see them. My friend sent those to me. And because my friends call me #BettyBadass. And those are my chemo socks, so I always wear those. I would wear loose-fitting clothing, something that kept me comfortable. And I would always take my shoes off, my boots off, whatever I happened to be wearing. And my nurses always got a kick out of my socks because they thought that was funny. Let's see, what else would I do? I would make sure that I ate a little something before a chemo. Maybe a light breakfast of some sort, coffee, maybe a bagel or a donut, nothing too heavy. A lot of times I would treat myself to Dunkin' Donuts because Dunkin' Donuts was just down the road from the clinic where I went for my chemo. I just went in there and just made sure I had a good attitude. And so that definitely helped. Where I had my chemo, I had a lot of good support. All the staff there was really great. There was one volunteer that we called the old biddy. I did not like her. I think I touched upon her in a video previously. I'm not going to go into any details about her, but she definitely lived up to her name. So that's what I did. Also, I want to talk about the long-term effects of the chemo on me. Some of the things I've kind of touched upon a little bit, like my hair, it's not as thick. It's actually definitely thicker, but it's changed texture. It's a lot curlier than it used to be. The color is actually a lot lighter. It's darker. If you've never watched my videos before, this is a new hair color for me. I've always been a blonde or redhead, maybe a light brown, but I decided to walk on the wild side and color it dark for something different. And so it definitely changed the texture and the color a little bit. It's a little lighter, naturally lighter. Another thing is that chemo causes what's called chemo brain. It's like a brain fog. It has affected my memory. And this is still to this day. I didn't know what it was until one day I was at chemo. I was talking to the nurse, and then all of a sudden it left me, and I just looked at her and I said, "I'm so sorry." And she said, "Honey, that's chemo brain." And so that's when I learned about it, and I read up on it and learned a little more. It's very common. I tend to forget things. I may be having, see this sometimes in my videos, especially if I don't do a lot of editing. I will be talking and it'll leave me. Whatever the thought, my next thought is, sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't. I will forget what an item is. Like one day I was talking about a bed, and I could not think of the word bed. I could picture it. I was like, it's got 4 legs, a mattress, you lay on it, you sleep on it. I couldn't think of the word bed. I mean, that is like so incredibly frustrating with me. I have to write lists down. I have to set alarms. I don't remember like I used to. But you know what? If that's a small price to pay to still be alive, I'm willing to pay that price. So, and I'm very thankful that people don't get frustrated with me. I get more frustrated at myself than anybody else. But that's definitely a side effect of it. Another thing is, if I had to do it again, I would have got a port. Now, I did not want a port because at the time that I started chemotherapy, I had a vas cath, which is how they did my dialysis. I had a temporary one here. Then when they realized they're going to have to keep me on it, they put a semi-permanent one here. Had I stayed on it, they would have moved it to my arm. But I did not want another port put in me because I had that one. And if I had to do it all again, I would have, because my veins are shot. That is another side effect of the chemo. If you don't do a port, a lot of times this will happen. I used to have really good veins, big, thick, fat veins, never had any trouble. You could get blood out of the crook of my arm, the underneath of my wrist, the top of my hands. Now, the only place that you can get blood, and that's if you're lucky, is right here. I've got a fairly thick vein there, but a lot of times that vein will roll. The vein will collapse. It has ruptured. Sometimes you get the needle in there and it just doesn't want to give any blood. It'll trickle out. And what should take, 15 seconds could take 3 or 4 minutes. So that's frustrating. But like I said, if I had to do it again, I would definitely get a catheter. That is one thing I would recommend, especially if you're going to have multiple treatments. And, I not only had to have my infusions done that way, but I was getting blood work done constantly. I was getting blood work done from a nephrologist. I had to get blood work done for the oncologist. I had to get blood work done for the cardiologist, the gastroenterologist. I was constantly doing blood work. So if I had that to do again, I would certainly do that. But I think that might be all. One last thing too is I really would encourage you that if you know somebody who is going to start chemo or is going through chemo, it's okay to ask questions. Absolutely fine. But please, when you ask somebody a question, ask them a question with tact. I've had people ask me things that I don't think they were thinking. They didn't mean any harm by it, but it hurt my feelings. And I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but just be wary of what you say. Encourage people, love people, lend them an ear, lend them a shoulder to cry on, let them vent, let them rant, let them do whatever they need to do. But if you want to help people, just be loving and kind and really think about what you're saying to somebody. And that goes for really any situation. Really think about what you're saying. Think, would this hurt my feelings? how would I feel if somebody asked me this? So I think that's about all for now. I know this is kind of a long video. I didn't mean for it to be so long. I kind of rambled on. And be sure to hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, that's okay. Give it a dislike. And also leave me a comment if you'd like to. Any interaction is good for me with the YouTube algorithms. My channel is growing slowly but steadily, and I just like to continue to grow it because I really want to reach out and help others, encourage them, whether they have the same autoimmune disease as I have or another chronic and or invisible illness. So, all right, I will catch you guys next time. But I think that's about it for now. I do hope you guys have a great day. And don't forget, not every day is good, but there is always something good in every day.